Chris Miller, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me.
So, I've been very excited to have a conversation with you. As I'm starting this podcast, you're the first person who's building something online and you're creating content. When I first found you, I read a Reddit post about how you're gonna try every Little Debbie snack in America.
Yeah, it's a goofy idea. It's a different idea, but I always liked Little Debbie growing up. I think it's one of the most talk about brand recognition. A ton of people know the Swiss roll and the oatmeal cream pie, the zebra cake. They've done a really good job with brand recognition. I have a background in podcasting and then podcast production, so editing and producing long form video. But people would always ask for short form video. And I felt like I wanted to spend more time recording and editing, producing short form video, but I needed to have a framework for it. Food is a really big sector. Like the food creators, there's so many of them, and we bond through food. People eat food. So I thought to myself, it'd be fun to be in food because I had a vision of like being able to go to restaurants and try really nice food with my mom or my wife. And that would be content that people could enjoy, but it could also create revenue. So Little Debbie's is a fun way. It's a daily challenge every single day. I eat a new Little Debbie or I create a video about snacks, food related videos. And right now I've eaten 65 different Little Debbies and I have about 35 to go. I did not realize there was that many Little Debbie products, but
I wouldn't have guessed that either.
yeah, over 100.
Wow. And so, how many days are you in right now?
I just did 65. So today when we're recording this, it'll be 66. By the time it goes live, no telling. But the current thing is Little Debbie's. And after that, we could go to other brands. We could go to Oreos or Pop-Tarts or Hostess or Tasty Cakes. I think staying in the snack lane is what I'm going to be doing with this channel because there's so much opportunity within snacks and they're cheaper than having to buy a filet mignon and eating a filet mignon.
Sure. So, I guess the first question I have based on that is like, how do you feel? You're eating sugary snacks every single day. I'm sure that's a common question you get, right?
Right. People will be like, what's your dental routine? What's your
Yeah.
workout plan? The trick, the simple and boring trick is I only do one bite or two bites.
Okay.
Of the 65 Little Debbies I've eaten, I've probably eaten two of them all of the way. And the two that I did eat, one was the red, white, and blue Nutty Buddy. And that's like half the size of the original Nutty Buddy. It's a lot thinner and it's single wrapped. So that's not really a big lift. And then I may have had like 3 or 4 of the mini muffins maybe. But most of the time I don't get too out of control. I just do one bite or two. And I have yet to snack on Little Debbie's off the camera.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, for this whole time.
How do you compartmentalize like the trade-off between virality and health? Sounds like, the way that you do that is just by not eating a lot of it, or off, like you said, keeping it on camera.
Yeah, that's a good question though, because ridiculousness and having something that's unique and hasn't been done before is a great way to get clicks. It's a great way to get a big viewership. My buddy, he's a YouTuber, and his first video that really popped off and did really well was eating Dollar General food for 50 hours. He went 50 hours and just ate Dollar General food, and he tracked that and did a video of the process, and people loved it. And like, why do people love it? Yeah, it is kind of crazy, but it's really relatable, accessible. You don't have to have a lot of money and you could do it yourself, but nobody's going to do that unless it's for a video.
Sure.
Or unless they have to, I guess.
Let me ask you this. Do you ever think about how like young people might see content where people are eating, snacks and do you ever feel like there's any like onus on you that you're like incentivizing younger people to like go out and try food that like might not be healthy for them? Do you ever think about anything like that?
I've thought about that. I thought about, there's different content types I could do. One of them is trying every seltzer, like non-alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol, but there's a lot of good seltzers out there. And that would be more healthy. Another one is trying every vegetable in the world.
Wow.
I think that could be a fun like content thing that's more healthy. I would say in moderation, things are cool. And I'll talk on my channel, like whenever people are like, hey, what about the exercise? Or people be like, you better eat them all before RFK shuts them down, like
Yeah,
things like
right.
that. And I'll just say, hey, I'm just taking a bite or two.
Right.
But my wife is an incredible baker. My mom was a baker. I love sweets. So I'm also not going to pretend that I don't like eating baked goods.
Sure. Would you say that that's like sugar is like your vice?
It would be one of them. Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. Eating in general, salt and sugar, I would say.
You're in pretty good shape. How do you work out a lot, or you
I
just hit the genetic
do.
lottery, or
I'll
what?
exercise a lot, and then genetically, I would say both my parents have more slight frames, so that helps. But
Sure.
yeah, I play soccer 2 to 3 times a week, 5:45 a.m.,
Oh
and
wow.
then personal training, weightlifting 2 to 3 times a week, walk the dog, try and be active. So that helps a lot too.
For sure, for sure. So how much of this is like irony versus a genuine business plan? Could it potentially be a bit of both? You mentioned that you're trying to partner with food distributors and vendors down the road. Like that would be your ideal goal. So I
Mhm.
guess like, can you talk a little bit about like the business side of things, or is any of this ironic at all in any way?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ironic. It's potentially a business model. The ridiculousness of it is I'm a 30-year-old guy, full-time job. I have a wife, baby on the way. We have a dog. We are involved in community stuff, involved in my church. A lot going on, yet I'm spending multiple hours each week putting eyes on little Debbie's, eating them, editing it, producing, cutting thumbnails on Canva, figuring out the best hashtags to use. It's ridiculous, but the reason why it could be a good business model is I love being creative. Creating things is like a big part of me. My mom is one of the most creative people I know. A lot of my friends are very creative. It's one of the best traits I find in people, and it's very fulfilling for me. So creating content, it, you could do a chat GPT thing and put it on LinkedIn. Like that's one thing, but like actually creating something from you, nobody else is doing what I'm doing. Like nobody else is dressing up in a boxing outfit and buying a triangle that replicates the exact note of the boxing bell and having a felt board that has a marquee set up that does Hostess versus Little Debbie, and I weigh them, and I have a spinning plate that I zoom in the camera, and I put their stats next to them. Like nobody's doing that, so it's a creative thing. It's fulfilling for me, and the reason why it'd be a good business model is I get to be creative and I get to have fun doing that and be proud of what I make. But then at some point in time with different platforms, there's monetization. So the podcast that I have, that's monetized on YouTube. It's not related to this food-based channel. It's a different channel, but that is a way for me to generate ad revenue. So all of the existing videos I have on there, I get paid from YouTube based off of what per 1,000 views, you get a X amount of money depending on your content. So that's one way that you generate revenue with the food-based content is YouTube. TikTok has the same thing. After 10,000 followers, videos over a minute, you could get ad revenue for. And then the second thing is brand collaborations. You know, you could do integration with one of your videos. Like I could be talking about Little Debbie and then I could boost Little Debbie. Maybe they reach out and they're like, hey, if you could do videos about this and that, we could give you this.
Right.
And then the last thing would be getting to a point to where you put together some type of, I mean, you could do events like the Yes Chef, that guy on Instagram. He's like he does all of these big events too, and he
Sure.
travels and he does experiences. So I would say the content game. Typically it's not the best way to get into business. If you're like, ooh, I want to get into business, I would say content isn't the best.
Really? And
Yeah,
why do you say that?
very competitive, very cash flow is very inconsistent. So regarding like your expenses and your revenue coming in, it's really
Sure.
hard to predict when you're going to get monetized, when you're going to get views, when brands will hit you up.
But at the
It's
same
also
time, like content is an inroad to like having people in your field discover you. And like if you create content, regardless of like whether it's monetized, like you're still building an asset that showcases your understanding of a particular space or industry that can, you know, delineate value to a potential employer with the worth that you could, you know, bring as a potential candidate. So there's also that aspect, right? Where, you know, you're just trying to like go beyond just like the resume. If like you're applying to a job, like don't you think content can help in that way and like networking with people and having, you know, um
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the there's so much to it, right? Like what you're doing. I mean, you had to email, set everything up. You're
yeah,
going to have to edit this. You're going to
yeah,
have to publish it. If you want, you get to promote it. Then you have to recruit more guests. You have to prep. You have to ask the questions. You have to be able to navigate this conversation. So I think it's a great like self-development and professional development tool. If we talk about like actually generating revenue, though, it can be hard.
sure. And
Yeah,
so what would you tell someone, or how do you think about like the revenue aspect? Is it like you mentioned that you're focused on like partnering with distributors, and that could be like massive opportunity down the road because brand deals are, you know, real sizable opportunities
yeah.
financially, right? But like do you think that like how do you think about like ways to go viral and monetize content? Or is that something that you think about still?
For sure, I do. And if someone's in my position or someone's in a position to where they're wanting to start YouTube or podcast or Instagram and make money off content, and that's the first thing they're doing and the only thing they're doing, my typically the best advice I can give them is to find more reliable income. And maybe that's in the form of a job, or maybe that's in the form of building a company that has already demand and that you're able to find clientele pretty quickly. Because creativity is a major asset, and it's also a fixed asset. You only have so much creativity, and one of the things I've learned is with desperation and financial stress, it can be hard to be creative, and you'll
Oh,
feel
sure.
pressure to go viral, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anytime you feel pressure to go viral, it's really hard to do. But I do think about virality. I do study. One of the things that I was thinking about yesterday is I need to focus a little bit more on TikTok and YouTube, and Instagram is going to get my scraps right now. But just like making intentional decisions like that, it's strategy.
Sure. Let me ask you a bit of a side question, just out of curiosity. Do you ever think about the invasive nature of TikTok's terms of service?
Originally, I was like not a big fan of TikTok
Why?
because the implicate or the my thought was that it was like the Chinese media influencing other people from other countries, doing different for you pages, presenting them with different things. And I know there's been a lot of history about that. I know it was like TikTok was going to get banned and TikTok didn't get
Right.
banned. For me, I hadn't really thought much other than like since I've actually been creating, I haven't thought much about the terms of service. I have to come to terms with myself about just the digital dopamine of TikTok and how I'm weighing in or contributing to the idea of like people just living their whole life. What do they call it? Like doom scrolling or bed rotting,
Yeah,
looking
sure.
at TikToks,
Yeah.
which I hate. I hate the fact that like that's the case for some people.
Yeah.
Um, but I also know like the creative process is really special, be it like painting a painting or putting together a beautiful quilt or building a movie. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm using the platforms to showcase it, and TikTok's one of them. So
Sure.
I haven't given much thought to the TOS since the whole like bite dance, Trump legislation, all that jazz.
Right. That's a good answer. I guess I just feel that I should ask just because it's one of those topics that's thrown around a lot. Like people talk about, like I mentioned, just how like their terms of service are very I guess more invasive than some other social media platforms. But my take would be like, it I don't necessarily understand how it would affect an individual on the individual level. Like I get that there's like, you know, uh, there's other implications maybe on a broader scale, like governmental or whatever. Like
Yeah.
people who work in the government, they're not allowed to have TikTok, right? Like there's a lot of that kind of thing. So I guess I just felt compelled to ask, but I don't think it really matters that much. But I don't know. So
Good for you. Follow your curiosity. I think that's one of the best things about podcasting. And it's going to be one of the things that'll make you and your show unique is no other podcaster has your curiosity. There are people who will be curious about similar things to you, but it won't be carbon copy. So whenever you have things pop up and you're able to weave it in, definitely give it a go.
that's good advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Have you ever reached out to Little Debbie?
I sent handwritten letters to 4 of the Little Debbie stores in America. 2 of them got sent back to me, told me I had the wrong address.
Oh no.
I called someone on TikTok reached out to me who used to work for Little Debbie, and they
Wow.
said, "Hey, I have a lot of connections there," and they sent me the information for the head of PR and communications.
Sure.
And I made a video. I called them on video, but I got their voicemail, so I just left the voicemail. So at some point, I could call them again or send a handwritten letter to the corporate office. And I imagine maybe in a few weeks, I'll be thinking about that because I'm not that far off from finishing like the Little Debbie journey. And I'd
Right.
love to be able to visit their headquarters, and they have like a park.
Yeah, that'd be
And
awesome. That'd be a good way
yeah,
to kind of like round it all out, right? Just the final video of you like at their headquarters talking with the team. That'd be sweet.
right. I think it'd be cool to eat a Little Debbie with Little Debbie.
That would
Like,
be legendary.
yeah, she's the chair of the board for McKee Foods, which is the manufacturer.
Is her
So
name actually Debbie?
actual Debbie, and
And she's
she's the
still around?
namesake.
She's still
What?
around?
Yeah, she's still around, and her
Wow.
picture, the Little Debbie logo, is her picture when she was younger.
Wow, no kidding.
Her grandpa used it without her mom knowing. So
Uh-oh.
that was a little bit of strife at the beginning, but
Sure.
it seems like they've resolved it because now she runs the show.
Right, right. So you mentioned that you would send handwritten letters. Have you ever considered like finding their company LinkedIn page and then using a tool like an email finder to like scrape these executives' email addresses and just send out like a bunch of emails with like a link to your YouTube channel?
I haven't. I did email or I did do the LinkedIn for the person I called, the one who runs the team for PR. Right now, my I don't have much of an ask from Little Debbie right now. I don't have much leverage. I'm a smaller creator. I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. I've had a couple Little Debbie distributors reach out to me,
Oh,
so
wow.
one step away from the company themselves.
Yeah,
People who go to stores and they sell to stores. And I have a guy in Minnesota who has a small distribution company, and Little Debbie's one of the products. So he sent me like 6 Little Debbies that I can't find, and it's like at a discounted rate. And then he'll hit me up, be like, "Hey, do you need the donuts?"
right.
I just had someone reach out to me on TikTok, and they're like, "Hey, I see you don't have the pecan pies," and he sent me those in a package, and that was from New York. So
Right.
it's cool. I don't need the Little Debbie endorsement quite yet, because right now I'm building the community, and I'm also getting all these like secondary connections that are helping the channel grow and giving it a little character.
Can you tell me more like about those secondary connections and like how you're finding these people? Do they always reach out to you, or do you have any like effort in place to find these people? Because I'm sure you're like rather intentional about that, right?
Yeah. So right now, most of them have reached out to me. The outbound that I've done has been the letters, the phone call, the LinkedIn request, and then creating, being intentional about creating a community. So right now, the website's OnlyTastes. The
Yeah.
brand is OnlyTastes, and the community is Taste Buds. So all of these people are taste buds. They're a part of this community, and they show up and they comment on the videos and they tell me that Little Debbie's terrible, or how dare you talk badly about the Little Debbie peanut butter crunch bar, right? So they talk, and I've been intentional about that, responding to comments, building something. And then people will reach out to me, mainly on TikTok. I had the distributor from Minnesota was on Instagram, and then some people comment on YouTube. But
Right. Okay.
yeah,
Let me just take a peep at these questions here. I had like a follow-up question in my head and I kind of it slipped my mind, so I apologize for that.
don't worry. It's like your memory is like a lazy Susan. You know, lazy Susans, they spin
Um,
around.
I don't know if I know what that is. No.
Okay, so oftentimes in a kitchen or in a cabinet, you'll see these two plates. It could just be one plate, but the idea is that you can spin it around and you can grab different things. And I've heard that your memory is like a lazy Susan. So with the lazy Susan, you have to wait for it to come back before you grab it. So if you give it a second, maybe 5 minutes from now, it'll come back around and you can grab it.
I'm
But
sure it will.
if you start reaching for stuff, everything starts falling off.
Yeah, that's like the classic the trope about how like the more you try to remember something, like the harder it is
Right.
to recall. Yeah, that's definitely something that I can relate to for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you this. So earlier you mentioned that you also do podcast production. How did
Right.
you get into that?
I was working a healthcare IT company job. It was a corporate job after I graduated from grad school. And I was traveling every week for the Department of Defense. That was my contractor. Well,
Pretty
that
cool.
was my client. There we go. I was contracted through a big healthcare IT company, and I would travel to different military bases every week. A lot of plane time, a lot of hotel time. And 2 years into that, I found it really challenging. I was away from my wife, our golden retriever, my community, consistency. I had to eat on the road, fast food, late nights, early mornings, um, airport delays, rental cars that smelled bad, a whole bunch of stuff that I wasn't into. So I left this job, but when I did, I didn't have another job lined up. So I was applying for all these jobs. In the interim, I wanted to build a podcast. I liked listening to the Joe Rogan Experience or the Dax Shepard podcast or Lex Friedman or all the sports podcasts. I loved the fact that we got to have access to conversations. Like I could be walking on a military base in Montana, but listening to a conversation that was being had in California, right?
Right, sure.
And I'm very big about social connection. That's one of my highest pursuits, is to be able to be related and connected to those around me. So I built a podcast called the Talk to People podcast, which is about growing and social connection and showing why life is better when you talk to people. So that podcast launched in January in the middle of my job hunt. And I pushed the trailer out a ton. I had people like the trailer. I had people leave reviews on just the trailer. And the trailer got put on Apple Podcasts homepage in their top new trailers category. So then it
Yeah.
started to reach a little more traction. And my audience that was just local, I remember a nurse from Africa messaged me and said, "Hey, while I'm on rounds, I listened to your podcast." I was like, "What?"
Wow.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that's range.
So from that, I had a guy I played basketball with who was the director of a local nonprofit, and he was the finance director. And he said, "Hey, we'd like to have a podcast for our nonprofit. I see you just went on Apple Podcasts homepage. You must know what you're doing. Could you help produce a podcast for us?" And I was like, "Oh, wow." I was applying to jobs. I had no idea what I was doing, but I said, "I'll show up." I got a tour of the facility. And then I just started putting together some quote. It got accepted, and that was my first client. And
Wow.
from there, I got to have another nonprofit client. And then another person was like, "Hey, could you help me with like YouTube?" So I was like, "Sure." Because this was about the time where my YouTube started doing a little better. And I had shared about, "Hey, YouTube's paying me now." And a lot of people want YouTube to pay them. They're like, "We want that for our organization." Um, so that's really how the company came about. So I quit applying for jobs,
Yeah, wow.
and I told myself like, all right, I'm going to try and build this. And I did that full time for about 2 years. I got to work with some cool people. But the downside of like working for yourself, and it got to a point to where I had a client that was in Virginia. I had a client that was in New Jersey. The a lot of remote, and I was working by myself. I would serve my clients and provide content or editing services to them, but I didn't have a lot of teamwork, a lot of companionship. I wasn't really connected to my community. So now the job that I do, I'm very connected to my community. I still have my podcast production company that I do part-time, but I'm kind of pivoting myself away from making money producing content for others into making money producing content that I create.
Right.
So that's like a business transition that I'm in the middle of right now.
Very cool. So you kind of like developed the skills that you needed to use for yourself while getting reps working for those nonprofits and doing their content strategies and editing and podcasts production and things of that nature, and then just kind of like parlayed that into your own path, essentially, right?
Bingo. And that's the benefit of like service-based companies. So you provide a service to them, but every time you provide the service to them, you get better at doing that thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I actually did remember what I wanted to ask you earlier, and it was about that community you said you had started. I guess I didn't initially realize that you also had a community called Taste Buds also. Where do you host the community, or what's that on?
Only in like it's only by name right now. So I haven't done any type of community platform or people don't join it. It's
There's no
like
like Discord channel or
no
anything?
Discord. In my videos, I'll talk about the taste buds, and I'll in the comments the taste buds, and on my stories I'll say, "Oh, Little Debbie's doing a giveaway. I wanted to make sure the taste buds knew." You know what I
Okay,
mean?
sure,
Like
sure.
kind of like bringing people together. But
Right. So it's basically like your most loyal audience that you just consider to be the taste buds, I guess. And do
yeah,
you ever like consider maybe starting like some type of secondary channel, or where you can like have your community live? Because I know a lot of creators have like Discords or a Facebook group or what have you. Have you ever considered that?
I definitely have. I was listening to the Colin and Samir podcast. No, actually, Creator Science. I was listening to Creator Science yesterday on a drive, and it was all about digital community and being able to build a product or a service and get digital community around there, and potentially even getting to like paid membership for community. I think it's great. I think it's a really good idea, but I'm not there yet, and I don't have um, a value add. I don't have a value proposition for a community quite yet. Right now, the value of being part of the Taste Buds is like, ooh, the person who creates the videos will reply to your
Right.
comments and
Yeah.
make a little fun joke. You know what I mean? And like rooting for me on my journey to eat every little Debbie in America. But
It's a good idea though to kind of bolster engagement, right? That's probably the reason you do it, right?
right.
Yeah, that
Yes, for sure.
makes total sense.
And the more people comment, then typically the better the video. Or uh, how about the more people comment, the video will do better,
Sure.
typically. Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. How did I guess I already asked that. What do you do for work right now?
So my full-time job, I'm a business advisor for the Small Business Development Center. So I work with entrepreneurs or people who want to build a business, and we give them all types of advising. So it's really fun. Like every day I get to sit down and talk to people who either have owned a business for a while, or they have a vision, or they have a dream. It's part of the Small Business Administration with the federal government. They have this program called the Small Business Development Center, SBDC. And all around the country, they have these SBDCs that serve their areas at no cost to the entrepreneur. So it's funded by city and state and county funding, and then the federal government gives some money. And the goal, the whole purpose is to help businesses thrive. That way, people get more jobs, and that way, more sales tax, and businesses move in, which is more property tax, and people just get to grow in general.
Yeah, like a long-term community play, community growth.
Yeah, economic development. Like, how can we get a better economy and support small business?
And how did
Uh,
you get into that?
I was doing my small business, that podcast production thing, and I had a background in education after grad school. And during grad school, I was a public speaking teacher. So that was a lot of fun. And a lot of business owners, even if they have a great business model or they're really got it figured out, if they can't communicate the key concepts to their business to the people that matter the most for their business, they're going to have a hard time. So communication was a good value add to what they were doing. And my wife works with the University of Kansas, and she was a student at the University of Kansas. So we had connections there. So whenever opportunity came up and it was like, hey, do you want this job where you're talking to people all the time and learning more about business? Because I need to educate myself on how businesses grow and how businesses work. And it's the same play with the podcast production, right? You're learning while you're earning. So anything I learn in my job, my W-2 job, I could apply to my personal business. But yeah, it's really fun. Anybody could really take advantage of it. It's technically for people in my area of Kansas, but if anybody ever wants to build a business or grow a business, I always like helping them out.
And what are the ways in which that you help these people?
It depends. So I'd say there was a big study by the Kauffman Foundation, which is like a entrepreneurial economic development group. And they said that the number one common denominator for successful business owners is that they have someone to talk about their business to, an outside perspective, someone that they can bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the value add. Sometimes it's people who are showing up and they're like, hey, can I talk you through a tough decision I have to make with my business? But we have a lot of resources regarding startup steps. So if you wanted to start a company, here's how to get registered with the Secretary of State and how to get an EIN number with the IRS and a business bank account and file your taxes. But then we have things like how to build a business plan. There's my dog. Yeah, we help people from the beginning to the very end, starting a business, getting registered, setting things up, building a business plan, a marketing plan, figuring out cash flow, how much money they need to make, expenses, and then all the way to how to sell a business. So if they wanted to sell a business, getting that set up as well.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. So it kind of just depends on like the type of business you're helping and just providing the necessary resources to empower people to, take steps toward their goals, whatever that might be for their given business.
Right.
What you mentioned about like a lot of the value add being in having people to bounce ideas off of and talk about their business, that is so relatable, man, because oftentimes like that's half the reason I started this, honestly, is just to like be able to talk to people who are smarter than me, hopefully. And because I find like with myself personally, like sometimes I'll just be so in my head that I don't know what I should be thinking about. And that sounds crazy to say out loud, but it's just very relatable. So I agree with you that there's massive value in being able to express yourself with someone to bounce ideas off of, having like a foil around your ideas, so to speak.
Yeah, we are very social creatures, and I think the brilliant part of humanity is when we work together. Sometimes that's as simple as just having someone listen to you, and you can wrap words around your thoughts. And that gives you a little more perspective and helps you process things. It's fun because I'll have people walk in my office that know way more about their business than I do. It could be someone who is involved in, they're a painter or a counselor, or they do garage floor, epoxy on garage floor. I have no idea how that works, but I know how to ask questions. I know how to pay attention and listen, and I know the business side of things. So adding all of that together, I just ask questions. I try to learn from people too.
Yeah, well, you're very good at it. I can tell you that I've gotten a lot of good ideas and perspective just from the last 30 minutes. And so kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
So you've mentioned throughout like the last 30 minutes or so, a big theme has been like community growth and communication, helping other people. You mentioned that that's like your main thing, right? Helping your community, communication, human connection. Why?
I love why questions. Whys are really fun. For me, I think it's a little bit of my genetic code. I think naturally I find myself, I remember my friends used to razz me during recess because they told me I talked too much. So I also think I'm curious, and I think curiosity was taught to me. My dad asks a lot of questions, and my sisters give him a hard time. They're like, oh, quit asking questions. But he's a very curious individual. I think foundationally, principles, morals, my ethics, a lot of it's based in the Bible. And biblically, it talks about how we're all created in the image of God. And it also talks about how important it is that we love one another and we take care of one another. So, community, the church, the body of believers, that's a really big and important part
Sure.
of Christianity. And then I think just out of the box, as humans, we are social creatures. There's so many studies that talk about the negative effects of social isolation and loneliness. You know, they got these phrases like the friendship epidemic and the friendship recession, the loneliness epidemic, and what are we going to do? They say it's being socially isolated is worse than smoking cigarettes and
Yeah.
obesity and heart health, right? There's a lot there. So you put all of that together, and then you get someone who's like really pro relationships, talking to people, making sure we prioritize those around us.
So is it difficult for you, like being someone who fundamentally values these types of things and connection, but we live in a world where, like you said, like there is this, I guess, quote unquote, epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Like there's a lot of people really hurting right now. Like, is it difficult for you to have these values and like, does it ever feel like an uphill battle because we do live in a world where there's so many like desperately lonely people?
Yeah, that is difficult. It's not fun. I hate that idea. I there's this book called Bowling Alone, which was written decades ago, but just the title Bowling Alone, it's about someone who would show up to the bowling alley by themselves to bowl alone because they don't have the social infrastructure to be able to have a companion or have a friend to bowl with. I think that it can be concerning and it can be discouraging. But whenever you actually dig into the data, there's chances that we rebound. The same guy who wrote that book, Bowling Alone, also wrote a book called Upswing, which talks a lot about in periods of isolation, whenever we're not really getting along together, typically we rebound and we recognize that. You see people building running clubs now. You see people trying to utilize Bumble BFF, right? Like you see these things where people are trying to utilize platforms or get things together on their own. Um, a big American Friendship Project, a big survey about friendship in the US, the biggest survey ever done, showed that people, they actually do have friends, they're just not spending time with them. There's a lot more going on, we're a lot more distractible and things can get our attention. So we're not spending time with people. So it can be discouraging, but it also is encouraging to know that, hey, just a couple adjustments, you know, prioritizing people, changing the way we have our schedules could make things a lot better.
Do you think creating content online can help people cultivate meaningful relationships?
Yeah, I
I do
do.
too. I do too. I think, well, for one, there's like the whole community aspect of finding like-minded individuals in the space that you're like making content in, but maybe there's more to it than just that. I mean, what do you think?
I think so. I think you're a good example. I think what you're doing is very vulnerable. You are putting something together. You are having to send out requests for people and their time. You're showing up. You know, you have showcased a really great quality of being like, hey, I want to be able to learn from people. And expressing that makes me feel valued and it makes anybody else feel valued that you share that with.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, so I think you're a great example of how creating content could help bring about relationships. And something I've found is that whenever you create content, it can inspire others to do the same, or it can just put you in a position to where people are more likely to contact you because you're a bit more visible.
Yeah, right. I guess the trouble would be like, how do you parlay those online relationships into like real life interaction? Or secondary question, is that important to do so?
It's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah,
And
because everyone lives in different places. You mentioned like someone was listening to your podcast in Africa, right? So like, how do you parlay those online relationships into something that's meaningful in the real world? And should you think about that? Like, I don't know.
I think you should. I think that I am an advocate of having a local support net and then having a digital support net. So, a local support net are the people who you could show up to in 10 minutes. It could
Right.
be, and it changes, like I'm a part of a soccer group that meets every week. I'm a part of a church that meets every week. I show up to an office almost every day. I go to a lot of events with my job, but through that, I've been able to meet people and be a bit more present in my community. And that gives a little bit of obligation to the people that I'm around to show up for them to some degree. I'm married, I have a wife, so I have like social connection there. I try to be present with my family. So we have all of these little layers of connection and of community. And I think it's really good to have in person because proximity is one of the most important things. That being said, I also think it's great to then you could do the digital stuff. And even whenever I play soccer with people, the question is, how do we get people to hang out outside the field? Like, whenever they're not playing soccer, like, how do we get them to where they'll all go get breakfast together or go to someone's house for a bonfire? And the people who drink, go grab a beer together or go smoke a cigar together, right? I think it's great to be thinking about it. And I think that's a really good first step. And I also think been a lot of like really cool meetups and conferences that I think in the podcasting world, like if you want to continue podcasting and treating this as a form of art and something that you really enjoy, there's a lot of podcasting conferences that you can actually go to and see people in person.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize that. Conferences for podcasters.
Yeah,
Interesting. Have you gone to any?
I haven't. And there's been some that have been near me, but I I know some people who like organize some of them. So if it's something you're interested in, then I can get you connected.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. One thing I wanted to ask you about that I had thought of is, do you ever find it difficult as a creative person to kind of exist within a corporate role?
Mm. My last job, that healthcare IT travel job, was pretty corporate,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot of room for creativity whenever it came to the main deliverables. How you did them, sometimes you could be a little more creative, and then your relationships with the client, you could be pretty creative. You could make them laugh. You could be like ask them like, "Hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing there?" Like you ask them questions. Like you could do that your own way. But now in my job, creativity is definitely rewarded. How to maybe teach this, or how to come up with a good metaphor that'll teach someone who cuts down trees for a living how they should manage their cash flow, or like how to come up with a metaphor about how a counselor needs to be sure to not only spend time in the business working with their clients, but spend time on the business working, making sure they're filing their taxes correctly, right? So creativity is a big thing in my job right now, but I do think there are a lot of people out there who feel that pressure.
Right.
And I think many of them come home and they create videos till late at night and they go to bed happy because they were able to create, but they may get to a point to where they're like, I need more of it. And they have to pivot.
Right. Yeah. And then there's also the flip side of that, right? Where it's people who, spend all their time or their day and all their energy at their day job, right? And then it's like a lot of people just don't necessarily have the energy to like be creative when they get home from working 8 hours. For some people, they might consider it to be like a soul crushing job where it just drains them. What advice would you have for those people?
My initial advice would be do it tired. It's okay. You will be tired, but
That's good
do it.
advice.
But from there, I would say that life is a bit too short to be in soul sucking situations for a long time. Circumstances pop up, and life definitely sucks at moments, and it's inevitable. Like the pain will be inevitable. But if it's too long, there are decisions that people could make today for a change that will happen a year from now, but a change that could bring about a lot of good things. So, one, do it tired. And number two, think about switching things up.
Do you think like some people, do you think everyone has like the access to switch things up though? Because some people have families or a mortgage or, they can't necessarily afford to take a step back, right? Like what do they do?
They'll do it differently. I think everybody can make adjustments. I mean, even the person who is with the terrible job in a third world country that there's like stuff happening. There, it's a very vast world, and like humanity is crazy. So like a lot of the advice that I will give isn't going to be that helpful to some people who won't relate with it, right? So
Oh.
I do think I'm limited in that. But I think on average, people who are listening to this podcast will be able to make some level of adjustment. And if they don't feel like they can, or if they don't know what those are, they probably should talk to people and bounce ideas off of them. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Aren't there always trade-offs though? Like if you could take a step back, let's say someone could afford to take a step back and maybe spend more time on something that is more meaningful to them. But, like what about like the whole like health insurance question or having like health coverage and stability and like there's a lot of peace of mind that comes with stability too, I guess, in its own way.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
You mentioned it. It's trade offs. So
Yeah.
knowing that and assessing it for
Mm.
me, quitting my job when I quit my job, I also left my health insurance behind. I had a great salary. I left that behind. I had prestige. I got to wear suits and be first class on plane rides and travel around the country. But I was not happy. And there was a lack of community in my life, a lack of consistency. I didn't feel healthy. There was changes I wanted to make. So that was a trade-off. Even with the OnlyTastes channel I'm working on, I stay up late sometimes to edit videos. Sometimes I'm not able to wake up in the morning and go to soccer. Sometimes I don't get that much sleep. But that's a trade-off and I'm cool with it. Like I'm comfortable making that trade. I'm comfortable becoming more creative, being a bit more privy whenever it comes to the digital world. Assessing the trade-off and making sure you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's very pragmatic. Like understanding that everything is, I guess, on some level a trade-off, and then just assessing it logically. Is that trade-off one that I'm willing to make and able to make? I think that's
Yeah.
a really good answer. Um, what was I going to ask? Um, Let me take a glance at these questions right quick. I had something, the same thing happened as earlier. I'm sorry. Like
No,
I said, I still kind of suck at this, Chris. I'm working on it.
no, you're doing great. The best thing to do is get your reps in. And I think you're good. I've been interviewed by people that you would crush them.
All right, so let me ask you that. Like, what's the worst interview you've had, and what was that like?
The worst interview I've had, it was from somebody who we did the whole interview and they basically never told me that I didn't have my mic on.
Oh, do you think they knew though?
I think they did. Like the audio quality must have been so bad,
Yeah.
but they weren't comfortable enough telling me.
Oh, wow,
And
that's odd.
and they never shared the podcast. So like I've been a part of interviews that are fun. Sometimes you get interviews with people and they're just not like naturally you're more confident, like you'll ask questions and you'll share your thoughts too. And I think that's a good thing. Like at some point people will want to hear what Jack thinks about things too. Uh, and you'll see that with really big successful podcasts. They want the guest to talk, yeah, but guest episodes don't they typically don't really like grow the success of the podcast all that much. They can really expand reach. Like if I was Dwayne the Rock Johnson
Yeah, right.
and you had like a big thumbnail of Dwayne the Rock Johnson and yourself, and you got Dwayne the Rock Johnson to put it on his Instagram story, like people would check it out,
Yeah.
but you would just be like renting their time a little bit. Uh, but a lot of people like after a while they'll want to hear from Jack.
Honestly, part of that was very relatable where you said like I can just there's been people that I've interviewed that are so much smarter than me and like so good at what they do that I've just felt like totally inept. Like it just like the conversation has reinforced this perception of ineptitude, and it made me feel, which is fine. I don't really care. It's just like I wish I would be able to ask like better questions sometimes, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's been difficult when I'm talking to people who are like really like I guess knowledgeable about a particular niche when that niche maybe not all that intuitive. Like when you're talking to, I don't know, let's say finance people or insurance people who are like, they're really smart a lot of the times, and I don't have that brain necessarily that's like highly analytical or good with numbers, and so sometimes a lot of this stuff just goes over my head, and I feel like I'm just wasting their time, and I'm just not doing a good job of being a communicator, and it's just not going to be good content, and I struggle with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I don't think you're alone there. I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. So what advice would you have when you're talking to people who are just way out of your wheelhouse and you don't want to seem like you're just wasting their time? You don't want to seem rude to them. What advice would you give?
Yeah, some people typically whenever I'm with a person and I feel like I'm wasting their time, I've gotten to the point now to where it may be the off chance that, yeah, I am wasting their time. Like the thing that I'm bringing to them is really not of value. And especially depending on the circumstance, if it's a really busy thing, a really busy room, there's a lot of demands on this person. And I'm just giving another demand that isn't really going to help them or move the ball forward with what we're working on. But other than that, I do think sometimes it's not on you, it's on the other person. Like I really want people to feel valued. And a principle of mine is to help others recognize that we each have unique and individual curiosities and personalities and just setups that are very valuable. We all have so much value. And that's like, I'd mentioned the whole like philosophy, like being made in the image of God. Like each individual has value to them. So whenever you get people and when you talk to them, it feels like you're wasting their time. I think that could be a self-talk thing, and it may need to be a little bit about like revisiting that and figuring out why that's the case. But it may also be on the other person, like they're not presenting pro-social, like pro-conversational.
You see, I've never had that, to be honest. It just, I guess, add more context to my experiences. Every time I've talked to people I don't necessarily feel that they don't want to be there. I just feel a little bad because the things I said, like, I just don't feel like I'm adding enough to the conversation. But I've been very fortunate that the people have been very, very kind and generous with me. So I've been fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, and there may be, I'll share two things.
Yeah.
One is that be gracious with yourself, because those people, especially if it's niche knowledge, it's taken a long time for them to get there. And you can't expect yourself to be able to play the game of all of these people who are really good at the games they play. So like knowing that and being real with yourself, like, okay, hey, it's okay. It's okay if I can't hang with them. I'm just going to do my best, because your audience more than likely is going to know less than you know, because you've done guest prep, you've looked into what they're doing. You're going to know more than your audience. So you're going to be the interpreter from the expert to your audience. So no matter how stupid you feel, if the audience were to ask themselves how much they know, they'd probably know less than you. Some of them may know more, but on average, typically they know less since you do guest prep. The second thing I'll say is there may be conversations that you shouldn't have. Like not everybody's going to be a good fit. And if there are people who you're just not sure how to connect with, not everybody will be a good guest. So I think that's like something that I learned over time, was being selective with my guests and choosing people who I thought would contribute value, but I also could be relatable with me and my audience.
So how do you discern, like, when you're thinking about, will this person be a good guest to have, or should I maybe decline this opportunity because I won't be able to relate? Like, how do you discern that?
It is hard. I did pre calls with a lot of my guests, and
Oh,
that
wow.
got that got people, some people wouldn't want to do the podcast because they're like, I have limited time and I'm only going to do X amount of time. Like I'm
Right.
only going to do the hour. But I would hop on calls for like 15 minutes with people. I remember I had a call with a guy, 15 minutes, and we both decided that the podcast was going to be a good fit.
And why was
Uh,
that in that particular case?
he was looking for a much larger like marketing and infrastructure promotion, and he wanted this to be like a really big thing. And he sees this independent podcaster, just me, myself, producing everything, asking questions about how he navigates building community within his company. And it wasn't what he was looking for. And I was grateful for that because clarity is helpful. And at the beginning, when you do a podcast, you do it because you want to create, but you also do it because you want to practice. And those are the things you think about. But I feel like slowly, the more you do it, the more you think more about like, well, how does this fit with my specific show?
That's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Because on one hand, I want to get reps. I want to be open to talking to all different types of people as long as they fit, the bill of what my podcast format exists within. Um, but on the other hand, it's like, if you, like you said, you don't necessarily want to talk to everyone because not everyone's going to be a good fit. But lately, I guess for me, I've been a lot more open to just talking to anyone because I am new. Um, but one thing I have done also is like I'll ask people if they've done any other previous podcasts or if they have a YouTube channel, and so far everyone I've talked to has one of those, if not both, and so I can kind of click into their stuff and see how they communicate and see how they think about things at least a little bit, and kind of make my decision that way. Um, but would you agree with that? That like based on where I'm at personally and just starting out, that I should be a little bit more gunslinging, if you will, like more open to talk.
Yeah, as long as you are going to be proud of the product. And I know that, you typically got to get through the podcast before you can really do analysis of the podcast and review
Sure.
of the podcast. But if you have an angle that you can get to, it's just like having a goal. Like whenever I started my podcast, the first episode I did was my wife. The second
Oh,
episode I did
cool.
was someone who was a pastor at my church, but also he was a police officer. And then I did a door-to-door salesman who sold vacuums. And then I did a who was number 4? Somebody, but like with each of those, I looked at social connection throughout life. Like door-to-door salesman, like how did you get to the point socially where we were confident enough to knock on someone's door in a neighborhood you've never been in, go inside their house to test out a vacuum, right? Like how did you close the sale whenever you presented them with a price that gave them sticker shock when you were in their living room, right? Like that was kind of interesting to me because I
Yeah,
feel like principles or concepts from a door-to-door salesman selling Kirby vacuums could then be used to somebody in just their day-to-day life and relationships.
yeah,
So I had a vision and an angle for that podcast. So definitely talk to anyone as long as you have that in mind.
sure. That's good advice. And I had explained to you earlier before we started recording that I don't necessarily know exactly what the format will turn into or what it should be.
Yeah.
So like right now, I have this general idea to talk to three archetypes of people, people who are in a similar place as I am, lost, not really doing that well career-wise, and just kind of documenting that in real time and being vulnerable. Number two, people who are industry insiders who can lay out a path from 0 to 1 because those insights are valuable to people. And then three, people, somewhat similar to yourself who create content online because in some ways, I guess, people who do so are outliers, and they can find opportunities by doing that. And so, with that said, though, like those are the three types of people I'm looking to talk to, but I don't necessarily know if that's the best format or if that's like the most engaging format. And so, a lot of this is just very build on, figure things out, get reps, and allow it to evolve as I go. I think about how there's one quote I heard a long time ago: things have to be messy before they can be clean. I don't know if
Mm.
that resonates with you at all.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
I don't know what the best format will be for you, but I do think that is a great way to start. And I would also encourage you to consider doing like guest interviews are great. I love guest interviews. Both of us are very curious people, and it matches that perfectly. You get to bring people in, you get to ask them questions, learn from them. I love that. But I also would suggest considering solo episodes at some degree. You can mix them in with guest episodes. You could do quarterly solo episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have potentially like a people who engage with your stuff and maybe they could ask you questions. A question and answer is always a fun format, or just picking a concept and educating yourself on that concept and challenging yourself to produce a 20-minute episode where you talk about that concept and maybe you have a call to action at the end, or you have deliverables on how things could be better. So,
Like what kind of call to action? What do you mean by that?
yeah. So I have a episode that I put up. It's a YouTube video. It's called "How to Revive Third Places for Millennials and Gen Z." So, are you familiar with the concept of third places?
No.
It refers to your first place is your home, and that's where you sleep, and that's where you're really comfortable. Your second place is your work, and that's like the role you have in society that you bring forth and you show up every day. And then your third place is this place where you tap in. It's like the community. It's where you go that isn't home and work, but you go to live life and build the relationship. So like think there was a big sitcom, Cheers, and people would walk in and everybody would know your name and they'd be like, "Hey, it's good to see you." Or the basketball court, the community center for some people, the public library, people showing up. And what we're seeing is like a lot of these places that people would hang out at. Like back in the day, it was such a big deal to go to the movie theater. Like on
Yeah.
Friday nights, people would dress up, they'd look cool. It wasn't just like sneaking in candy and watching something and leaving. It was like a big event.
Yeah.
And but now we're seeing a lot of these places are being removed, or they're expensive. You actually have to pay to hang out there. So like hanging out at the arcade or hanging out at the cafe, it's different. So I made a video talking about the importance of third places, what they are, why we're seeing not as many of them, and then educational part about here's how to build a third place. Here's how to find something that you'd be willing to do, how to make it recurring, how to make it accessible. And the call to action at the end was to one, either start putting things together to where people will show up to them, or being very appreciative of the people in your life who do put things together where you show up to, being very appreciative of the people who put together the third places in your life. So that's a solo episode. So I'm like thinking through that. I'm preparing for that. I'm editing that. I'm recording that. So if you could mix like a solo episode in with guest episodes, I always like that format because it also gives you don't have to rely on the guest, right? Like I'm bad at emailing. So you have to rely on me to schedule, but you don't have to rely on that. And number two, the relationship with the audience will continue to grow.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. That's a really good idea, and it's been one it's been an idea I've been thinking about a lot lately, to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
think, like I touched on earlier, I feel like sometimes I don't have a lot to say unless I have someone to bounce ideas off of, or a foil around my ideas that you can exchange with others, like this, right? Like I feel very comfortable like talking to new people and people from various walks of life, but sometimes I find that I'm just at a loss for words when I'm by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's been my challenge, I guess. But I really should just do it anyway. Or one idea I even had was to use like the Chat GPT voice thing on the phone and just have it like say, "Hey, Chat GPT, I'm doing a solo episode. Like, give me a topic," and then just riff on that topic for as long as I possibly can. And it might be horrible, or it might be kind of fun. Like, I don't know. Um, so I have been thinking about that, and I appreciate you sharing that.
You'll get better over time. So you may not be that good right now, but my guess is the more you practice and the more you're talking on a microphone, then you will get better. I like the idea of using ChatGPT. I have a line in the sand with ChatGPT. I love when it helps me workshop ideas. And I love whenever it helps me think through things, maybe reformat things. But I always want to try and make sure I'm not delegating or outsourcing my creativity. So at some point, I'm not asking ChatGPT about ideas for what I can podcast about. I'm not asking for an outline for the podcast. Um, I want the ideas to come from here. I found myself in a position to where I would be like, oh, I need to record every week for my podcast. And Sunday would come and that would be publishing day. Like I was supposed to publish my stuff on Sunday and I didn't have anything. So I found myself going to ChatGPT and saying, could you help me come up with a podcast? Okay, could you help me come up with a outline? Okay, could you help me come up with talking points from the outline? And I was just like regurgitating things from ChatGPT to my audience. And the whole purpose of me having the podcast is to be creative and
Yeah.
to get what's in here out there. And I wasn't doing that. So that's a moment where I would have to, if I were to be back in that and I was talking to myself, it'd be like, all right, Chris, either you need to change your publishing schedule, which is completely fine. You don't like consistency is cool, but if you're just actually not being creative, change your publishing schedule to where you have more time, or change your agenda so you're actually giving more thought to the podcast. So yeah, I
Sure.
think it can be a cool tool. Just think about how you're using it.
No, I think that's a really good insight. I think people who, and I've personally like been able to like experience this, using it too much to kind of outsource your thinking, that's not good. I think that has
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like the same common trope about how, the better the technology gets, the dumber the people who use it become.
Yeah.
I think on some level, for some people, that could be like true. We have all these resources, but we're like a lot less adept um, to figuring things out on our own, maybe. When we get so dependent on these tools and technologies. So yeah, I like that feedback, and I like the way that you approach, your own podcast with a high degree of creative rigor. I think that's important. It's a good takeaway from this.
It's a great
So
way to put it too. Creative rigor, having creative rigor and being a critical consumer of
yeah.
what you do use, because creativity, this creative process, it's incredible. That's where I get a lot of euphoria, is like being in it and creating something I feel proud of. So if I were to create things that weren't actually like coming from me, I don't feel as proud about them either.
So, what advice would you give to someone who doesn't feel so creative? I can tell you personally, I used to feel a lot more creative than I do these days, and I think that's just because I feel the pinch of reality a lot more now, and just
Yeah.
life being difficult, and I feel like I have a lot less access to creativity, and I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. They feel a lot more creative when they're younger, and when they have the freedom to express themselves and to try different things. Um, what advice would you have to those people?
Yeah, I took a class in college about creativity. Creativity is fascinating. I can definitely relate with you about feeling the pinch and not feeling as creative. I think it's a thing. It's very real. So I encourage you to um, accept that and know that it's temporary. Like the pinch isn't forever. There will be moments where you feel more room and relief and margin. I know there's been times in my life where I felt very stressed and desperate, and I wasn't the most creative. So be gracious with yourself. If you need to, you can always, like, depending on what the thing is that you're creating, look at other people who are doing it, look at people who inspire you, look at what's working. If it's like a YouTube thing, go look at YouTubers who are creating content that you'd love to create one day,
Yeah.
and be inspired by that. So that could help creativity. The second thing, being gracious with yourself, giving yourself time. Our subconscious is much more vast than when we're consciously trying to think of something. I'll be in the
Absolutely.
shower and think to myself, oh, I should do a video about discontinued little Debbie's,
Yeah,
you know? And
sure.
then I do a video about discontinued little Debbie's and it does really well. And 1,000 people like a comment about the banana twins. So then I'm like, huh, maybe I should do a video about banana twins, So like creativity will create more opportunities to be creative.
For sure. Yeah, I am gonna start doing that. Just like doing solo episodes, I guess, and they're probably going to suck real bad, and that's okay.
It's okay.
What do you think
And
I should talk about the first time? I'll talk about whatever you think I should talk about.
I'm sure there's a question that you'd be fascinated by. Um, I like questions. So like I did one that was how to talk to your friends about politics.
I saw
And
that on YouTube.
right. And then I've done how to start conversations and keep them going, or how to communicate more clearly, or how to revive third places from millennials and Gen Z, right? So I like questions. So just pick a question that fascinates you and roll with it. It doesn't even have to be about anything we've talked about. It
Sure.
could be about the Cambodian jungle, or about white rhinos and the endangerment and what people are doing to preserve the species, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be talking about that though, because like, why would that? How does that have anything to do with what I'm trying to do here?
I'm not sure. And that would be the question of like, does it fit? But
Right, right.
I would hate for you to put yourself in a box from the jump and rather follow your curiosity.
Yeah.
Because maybe you realize you are really passionate about rhinos and you need to change your podcast.
Yeah, maybe that'd be insane. It'd be really interesting if I start a Rhino podcast.
Right.
Um, yeah, I guess another thing that I've been thinking about, or kind of like a little bit worried about, is if I was gonna do a solo podcast, or it's more like raw expression. I'm just talking about like the stuff that I'm thinking about. Well, to be honest with you, a lot of the stuff I think about is pretty dark, and it's not like good to put out there all the time. And I think I worry that if I associate those types of raw expression with something that I'm trying to allow to have inroads to a professional or career or opportunity, professional opportunity, I'm worried, I guess, that it could um, diminish the sentiment of what I'm trying to do here if I start talking about things that might not be widely celebrated, you know?
Give me an example.
Um, I guess one question that I think to myself a lot, like when I'm just by myself in quiet, is like, why is it better for humans to exist than not exist? That's a question
Uh-huh.
I've thought about for many years, more than I can count. And I'm convinced that there isn't a good reason. And I think that's not an answer that people want to hear.
Well, I'm curious about the question in itself, but I think, yes, certainly have wisdom about what you publish to the internet.
I don't have
Um,
wisdom about anything though, to be clear. Like I'm not like inclined in any particular niche. I'm not like skilled in any niche. I don't have professional experience in anything. So I don't
yeah,
know.
and that'll be a little different. So whenever I think of wisdom, I think a bit more about like you do have a lot of wisdom, like your ability to do what you're doing. You're very enterprising. You have a podcast. Not many people have a podcast. A lot of people say everybody has a podcast. That's not true. That's not true. Like, let's think of everybody in your family who has a podcast. Let's think of everybody you went to elementary school who has a podcast, middle school. Not that many people have podcasts. So you're enterprising. But wisdom is less about like a specialty niche knowledge. You know the most about Python programming language, and you also know the most about the rhinoceros, right? Wisdom's like thinking about cause and effect is really big. So just when you are in a position to where you're creating content and people consume the content. So I just mentioned that because you're talking about professional opportunity. I think people like the raw emotion. I think a lot more people could relate with you when you say, I'm nervous to share what's in my brain. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I would say that you are not alone, and that always remember you get to choose what you create, and you get to stand by what you create. And it'll be like, imagine you're a big painter and you paint a beautiful painting. You're going to have people who come up to you and say, I really love the way you used color. And you'll have other people say, those sharp, jagged lines were hurt my eyes. And then you'll have someone say like, no, I'm not going to have that painting in my office because it doesn't fit our feng shui. And then you'll have other people say like, yes, I want that painting. So anytime you create content, when you create your podcast, some people will like it, some people won't like it. But
Yeah.
if you stand by it and you have like creative, affinity or with what you create, I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm open to like doing like having those raw, expressive conversations, even if they're uncomfortable for some people to hear. Like that doesn't bother me. I'll do it. But I guess what I'm more like, maybe I should phrase it differently. Like I guess I'm thinking that maybe it would be better to have like a completely separate channel that's not tied to this one, where
Yeah,
it's like maybe not using my full name, like where I can have a little bit more comfort to talk about things that might be generally considered as uncomfortable conversations, I guess.
that could be an option.
Yeah. Okay. So you
Hmm.
agree with that? Like that's like a viable way to think about it?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. I mean, that's what I've done. I have a Talk to People podcast. I have the OnlyTastes. I have, what other channels do I have out there? Like my channel on YouTube's Talk to Chris Miller. So to varying degrees, they're all pretty different. Um, and if I wanted to, I could host a different account, and it doesn't even have to have my name in it. You know, on OnlyTastes, I'll wear my name a lot. Like it can be whatever we want to make it.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked for feedback on that. That's really good advice. Thank you for sharing that, man.
Of course, yeah,
Um,
and thank you. Like all the great questions. I'm grateful that I get to be a part of the first few episodes,
I am
and
too, man. You're like a
I'm
dream
excited to see
guest.
what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this, man. Like I said at the very beginning, I was very excited to talk with you because you're doing something that I think a lot of people want to do. Create content in a way that's fun and engaging, in a way that's community building, and that has real inroads to opportunity.
Yeah.
And I really commend you for that, and it's inspiring and it's really cool, like hearing like how you navigate these things. It's really cool, man.
So, what's your favorite Little Debbie?
I've never had one in my life.
Well, that's like me with coffee. I think I find that interesting.
You had touched on something just a little bit ago, and I had another question about this. So, a podcast about human connection and talking to people is very different than, reviewing the Little Debbie snacks.
Yeah.
Like, do you keep those separate for a specific reason, or do you ever think about like how they might be able to be tied together? Do you ever talk about like what you're doing with your snack reviews on your podcast?
Never done it once. You know more about the snack reviews than my podcast audience
Wow.
does.
Why
And
is that?
I feel like I will. I feel like for me, a big issue is focus. I can be creative. I can be involved in all of the projects. The amount of website domains I own, like I've had to cancel website domains. I'll start
Yeah.
projects, but I've told myself, Chris, if you can just focus on one thing, then you'll learn a lot more and your opportunity for success will be higher. And I think that's going to be true for me. It's risky though. I could focus on the wrong thing and really double down. But thankfully, I'm in a position to where I know it's not the wrong thing because I've learned so much and I've been able to be creative and I've made things I'm proud of. So I know
Yeah.
that's the right thing. The views and the engagement and the audience, the followers could be the wrong thing. I could be growing a lot faster. And I recognize that, but I'm content with like focusing on it for now. But yeah, focus is a big thing. So I haven't done a podcast episode since I started creating OnlyTastes
Oh, right.
videos.
I think I saw that. Yeah, your last one on YouTube was what, like 3 months ago? I was looking at it yeah, 3 months ago.
Yeah, and my first OnlyTaste video was 3 months ago. So it was
Right.
like
Okay.
right then and there. So I do have a vision of being able to bridge the two because I think food is one of the best things to bring people together. So I do find myself thinking about it. I just don't know how and I don't know when, but I have a great community that is probably wanting to talk to people podcast episode every day. There are more people who listen to the podcast.
Oh, right
So
on.
I'm
So
grateful
it's
I have.
how are you continually like growing it when you haven't posted though?
Right now, it's just discoverability on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Spotify's getting better at discoverability. They're suggesting episodes to people. So my like search-based content, like I have a episode, how to have conversations and not feel awkward. That is a search-based, like people could look up how to have conversations and
Right.
not,
Yeah.
right? And it pops up and it's the Talk to People podcast. So also simply put, like people could put talk to people. Like I want to figure out how to talk to people
Right.
and my podcast could pop up. So yeah, just natural discoverability for content I've already created.
Right. Right. Um, so you mentioned focus was like something that you struggle with. Do you think you're like ADHD at all, or what's your thoughts on ADHD?
I believe ADHD is probably overdiagnosed. I think a lot of people are very distractible, but I think that it's not necessarily a bug in our wiring, but a feature. We historically have needed to pay attention to a lot of things to stay safe and to survive and to succeed. So just dialing in on one thing whenever there may be a threat or an opportunity that is around us, that could be a bug. So I think nowadays we have really engaging technology and we have a lot of opportunity and we have a lot of good food and there are a lot of pretty people and funny things and cute dogs that we could look at. So
Yeah.
just regarding like the ADH thing, I've never been like tested for that, but I wouldn't say I have it. I think a lot of people say they have ADHD when really, um, I'm not a mental professional, so I can't weigh on the actual diagnosis part of it, but I do think the concept of us being distractible and not being able to pay attention and focus, can largely be a part of how we're designing our environment, and what we're focusing on.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's like a type of like there's symptoms of ADHD that people can develop just from spending too much time with like the wrong behaviors, whether that's social media or whatever else. So like
Yeah.
there it inflates like these symptoms of ADHD. But then sometimes I wonder if maybe there's like a genetic or otherwise thing at play for maybe other percentages of people. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and
Hmm.
I feel like I have it. For the longest time, I wasn't sure if I believed in ADHD. Like I just thought, well, everyone has ADHD.
Right.
Um, but like, yeah, I can tell you, I cannot focus on things unless I'm interested in them,
Right.
and so it's tough. Like it's frustrating sometimes. Sometimes I'll even be interested in some things, but like I don't have the natural knack for it, and it's just impossible to like stay on task. That's been an
Yeah.
issue for me too. So I don't know. I was just curious to ask you about that because it's personally relevant.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing. And I think that, um, when you find yourself having a hard time focusing on something that you want to focus on and that is interesting and you do care about, reminding yourself that one drop in the bucket, is progress, right? Like progress looks really goofy. With podcasting, it'll look really goofy. Like
Yeah.
maybe you publish episodes and nobody's listening. And maybe you publish an episode that a lot of people listen to. And maybe you go a day and you don't feel creatively inspired. But know that you're not alone in that. And then know that something just as small as spending 5 minutes a day to think about good uh, podcast ideas or questions that may be fascinating to you, spending 5 minutes looking at podcasts that are similar to yours, spending
Yeah.
5 minutes putting together an email, right? Like it all counts.
Yeah, I have no trouble doing like that stuff. Like I'm interested in the podcasting aspect of things and I'm interested in talking to people. So like doing research, that's all effortless for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes like I just get so tired and I just fall asleep, like because I'll be trying to learn about something that doesn't make intuitive sense to me, and I'll just become like narcoleptic all of a sudden. It's really difficult. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that sounds difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
Simply put,
I've really enjoyed talking to you, man. So thank you
of
for doing
course.
this.
How do you land the plane on your show? Is there a question you ask or is it just a,
Oh, I guess just let it crash.
yeah,
No, I don't know. That's a good question. Should I have a landing protocol?
I like landing protocols. I
Okay.
like at some point in time, one of the things that people like is the predictability and the unpredictability of the podcast. It's
Right.
unpredictable what the guest is going to say, but what's predictable is who the host is, what the host personality is, but then also kind of like the mechanics of the show. Like some people start with speed rounds, or they start with,
Mm.
you know, give us the X moment in your life where something happened. And then, a lot of people be like, hey, do you have anything to plug at the end? Or do you have any final thoughts? Or let me ask you one last question that I ask to every guest. Something
Yeah, I
like
should
that,
I
right?
should maybe think about that. One thing I've been thinking about is like having maybe formatted questions that I just ask everyone regardless of like who I'm talking to. Like there might
Yeah.
be certain boilerplate questions and have that like baked into the format. Like I think about that a little bit. But I also, on the other hand, like I think about like one of my favorite podcasts is the Tim Dillon Show. I'm not sure if you're familiar at all,
Yeah.
but he,
Brilliant.
yeah, he ends every podcast just by saying "Good night, everybody," and there's no landing. It's just kind of
Yeah.
an abrupt and like I don't know. I guess that resonates with me for whatever reason.
And that's good too, right?
But he does a
uh,
solo show, so I guess maybe when I'm talking to people, I should have like better protocols in place. Um,
yeah.
what would let me ask you this: is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not?
Huh.
Or is there anything we should pull a thread on that you'd like to talk about that we didn't get a chance to yet?
I think we talked about a lot. I think it was comprehensive. I think my goal was to be able to talk about only tastes, and you asked about that. My goal was to be able to connect with you, and I felt like we had moments where we did that. And what's beautiful about podcasting is now Chris Miller, and
Yeah,
now I know the Life Audit, and I know Jack who hosts it, right? So
yeah.
it's
Thank
like
you.
now it's like, okay, well, from here we get to also do connect, and things can happen. So that's the beauty in podcasting. I'm grateful for the time, uh, the show, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I genuinely enjoyed this. You're about as good of a guest I could ask for where I'm at right
Yeah.
now and just in general. So, yeah, I do hope to stay in touch. And yeah, thank you.